Good morning. Welcome in, everyone. We'll give everyone a few seconds to pop in here and get settled. Looks like we've got a lot of guests coming in this morning. We've got a great webinar lined up for you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning and welcome to today's webinar, the Ease of ROI, Driving Efficiency Across Your Agronomy Business. What does that mean? Well, in short, Taranis equals ROI. Let's talk about the word efficiency. It's something that we hear a lot, but it's not a buzzword right now. I think it's really survival. We know that the ag economy is tight. We know margins are thin. And really, we also know that every single minute of every single day matters. And that's exactly what today's session is about. How retailers are freeing up time, reducing costs, and turning that efficiency into real measurable ROI with Taranis. How many of you guys feel like you're being asked to do more with less? More acres, more pressure. The hours in the day don't get longer. That's the challenge that's facing agronomy teams across the country. And Taranis isn't backing away from that. We're here to help you turn that challenge into opportunity. I'm Jennifer Stutz. I'm the customer experience lead here at Taranis, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. You'll hear from our team, one of our retail partners who are living this every day and seeing the results Taranis brings firsthand. A few housekeeping items before we get started, guys. If you got a question, anything comes up, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Drop your question in there and we'll work those in as we go. We have been approved for CEU credits, so at the end of our session, we'll display a QR code that you can scan, and we'll do a drawing for a few Amazon gift cards. I want to go ahead and get started. I think we've got a lot of great content today. I'm going to turn it over to Jason Minton. He's our Chief Commercial Officer here at Taranis, and he's going to kick us off with what we mean by efficiency and the ease of ROI. Good morning, Jason. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, Jen, thanks so much for the introduction. Yeah, appreciate everybody for joining this morning. And what I want to do at this first slide is really kill kind of a myth that's associated with AI. First off, AI is not going to take anybody's jobs. AI is going to make you better at the job that you're doing. And that's what we're seeing with some of our partners. And that's why we really wanted to talk about return on investment. And in this specific instance, we're talking about the efficiency gains. So why would that be possible with a tool like Taranis? Well, Taranis takes leaf level imagery of every single acre of a farmer's field, and it doesn't just provide you back with interesting imagery. It uses AI to assess that imagery, and it sends you back a summary so that you can know exactly what's happening on every single acre at a glance without having to go look at them all. So as you think about efficiency, you think about the drive time to get to a field in the morning. Farmer calls you, he's upset, he found something, he wants you to come look at it. You've got to take the long drive out to the farm. Now you drive out there, you spend the hour-long time looking through the field, maybe scouting a few of the acres, finding some of what the farmer was talking about. And eventually then you get back to the office and maybe you come up with a solution to provide to that farmer. What does Taranis do? It puts all that information in your fingertips, and it does it before the farmer even calls you. So think about what that's going to do for you from an efficiency perspective. So not only do you save time through scouting and not having to be going out to the field to find this stuff, Taranis finds it for you and puts that agronomic detail in your hands so that you can make the same decisions you're making today, but do them faster than ever. And what we love about this is it allows you to redeploy your efforts to other things that drive more value for you. Selling those proprietary products, adding some efficiency in another aspect of your work, and the reduced travel, labor, and everything that it does for you here drives an efficiency that is worth tangible dollars and makes you more efficient at your work. So we're going to cover all that today, but really wanted to break down that myth. One is that AI is not going to take anybody's job. And here's the other one that's really important for you to hear today. If you haven't worked with Taranis, or maybe you're new to Taranis, the first thing that happens is sometimes people will say, hey, this is maybe creating more work for me. It won't. Over time, it'll create less work. The AI does the work of assessing every image for you. And what you'll even hear about Taranis is this Ag Assistant product that actually helps you write a recommendation and brings in detail from a bunch of different places to take what would take hours or maybe even days to do. And it does it in a very, very short amount of time. Again, increasing your efficiency to get to those other tasks that actually drive value for your organization. So thank you for joining. Jen, thanks for leading the call. Special thanks to Tim and Trevor, who are going to take you into some real detail about how they're seeing it be used by their customers.
Thanks, Jason. Guys, before we dive a little bit deeper into efficiency, I'd like to bring our guest in to kick us off. We've got Trevor Cox with Central Valley Ag. Central Valley Ag has been with us from the very beginning, going on 8 seasons next year. Trevor, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you introduce yourself to everyone here this morning? And can you share a little bit, really high level? We've got a whole discussion plan this morning, over the course of the next hour, but share a little bit about what this looks like in practice. How does Taranis fit? Give me your perspective on that.
You bet. Well, I'm Trevor Cox. I'm the ACS Regional Manager of Kansas for CVA. So basically anything precision ag technology goes through me. So soil sampling, variable rate application, Taranis, nitrogen models, moisture probes, anything related to technology basically goes through me for the state of Kansas. So yeah, and Taranis has been a great partner for us. Like Jennifer said, yeah, 8 seasons now. And it was kind of funny how Jason said, some people think it adds more work to their day, and initially we kind of had that same impact as well, and it was really mostly a trust deal for us. So new technology, artificial intelligence, everybody's got that level of skepticism about it, and our agronomists did as well. So those first few seasons we actually offered part of the package was one of the options was an agronomist would actually go and ground truth everything each time. That lasted 2 seasons, and then that just went away because it was basically irrelevant. I mean, if it was saying that the stand was this, we would go out there and we would confirm it. Yeah, it's telling it was correct every time. If it was seeing a pigweed, the pigweed was there. Or if it was seeing bugs, the bug was there. Yeah, so it kind of just became silly sometimes to go out there and do that, just repetitive. So really, after that level of trust was increased with it, and when we gained to where we just knew that it was there, what it was seeing truly was there, that went away. I mean, it increased our efficiency incredibly. So yeah, so to answer your question on just the day to day, it's different for each person, I would say. Some of those more in-depth, more high maintenance customers, the agronomist for them typically would start their day just opening the dashboard. Okay, what new flights do we have? What new problems do we see out there? What needs to be addressed? So instead of having to go to each field, now they can just select what's the worst, go to the map, where's the worst area in that field with this problem. Say it's stand count, just for the beginning of the season, they can look and see, okay, here's the stand of all of our fields. Break it down, okay, here's the worst stand. Look at the map on that one. Okay, here's the worst spot in that field. Then they can go directly to that spot in the field and figure out what's going on. Instead of having to do the old crop scout loop out there looking for every issue, now they can just go straight to the source, and it much, much faster.
Trevor, that is a great look at how Taranis works day to day. We've got 2 pieces that we're going to talk about here today when we think about efficiency. We're going to talk about capacity gains, and we're going to talk about hard savings. And, sometimes you have to think, what does that really mean? We're going to kick it over to Jason. We're going to kick it back to Jason, and he's going to kick us off with capacity gains. Tell us a little bit about what it means, Jason, what it might look like for a retailer. Give us an example. And then we're going to open our discussion between Trevor and Tim to really dig into some of the nitty gritty that Trevor hit on in his high level overview of Taranis. But Jason?
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. So I think you're going to pull up a slide there for us. Yep. Thank you so much. So guys, this is what I'm thinking about. And I think about my time in the seed and the chemistry business. What I know about, and I'm looking at Tim on Trevor on my screen, but I bet you there's a bunch of you on this call that when you step foot on the farm, things get better for your business. And the reason they get better is because there's farmers out there that are dying to have your knowledge and your agronomic expertise. And they want you on their farm to help support them and service them, and to be proactive and help them address issues that are yield robbing and killing their profitability. And you guys all know that I'm preaching to the choir on that. But I wanted to reinforce for you guys how important that is, that the farmers know that you're watching that you're watching their work, and you're helping them make agronomic decisions that are going to make their crop yield better. So in this case, we're thinking about Taranis now scouting with leaf level imagery. Leaf level meaning you can see exactly what you would see if you were standing out there holding the plant in your fingertips. You can see that same information. You can see it all at a glance. And what's that allowing you to do? it's creating more time for you to have more visits that are more impactful and actionable than ever before with your growers. And that's really what we're going for at Taranis. That's what we're driving to try to support you with. And again, it's about driving those visits that have more impact, but having them give you that actionable information ahead of time. And it's through that leaf level imagery and AI that creates an efficiency that we'll gain here that we've never had access to before, to see every single acre like that. So again, let's think about, and Trevor and Tim are going to do some question and answer here, but we're going to talk about what is that impact that we're seeing through these additional time that's created and the visits that get created through that. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jason. Guys, before we jump into our panel discussion and really hear some more detail from Tim and Trevor, let's get a quick pulse from everyone here. We've talked a little bit about efficiency, capacity gains. We're going to throw up a poll question. Poll question here, number one, how would you describe your organization's current scouting capacity compared to last season, right? Do you guys cover more acres per agronomist? Maybe it's about the same as last year. Do you cover a few acres, maybe due to workload or staffing, or, right now, not so sure. It's something that you're not tracking. We'll give everyone a few seconds to jump in and to weigh in. We've got answers coming in here, a little bit all over the board. They're still coming in, so we'll give it a few more seconds here. Going back and forth between covering more and about the same. All right, we're going to go ahead and end the poll. We'll share the results here. So it looks like 39% are covering more acres per agronomist, and the majority are about the same as last year. Few have some staffing issues or maybe covering few acres, but that's kind of where we sit. So I think that this is really good because everyone has the same challenges, right? So we're going to dive in and we're going to hear how teams are tackling capacity and trying to turn those time savings into opportunities. So we're going to turn it over to Tim and to Trevor. Trevor, we're going to kick off with you this morning, right? We've got an open discussion. Tim, feel free to jump in. Trevor, you gave us a high-level overview of how you and how CVA are using Taranis. Once that became integrated into part of your workflow, what changes did you see? What day-to-day changes did you see? Kick us off with that.
The main one would just be the efficiency, not having to go to each field to find the issues, I would say. And it kind of dives back to it's a little different for each customer. Some guys just kind of like to take care of their own stuff and then call when they see issues. Other guys expect their salesmen to be very involved and to be at those fields and to find the issues for them and to be more upfront about everything. And those were the ones that really saw the most impact, I would say, because they're the ones that that now they can just go to the dashboard and see the issue without having to leave their desk. And then they can, if it's needed, they can go out to the field and do the diagnostic work instead of having to do the old crop scout loop at every field and look for those issues. Now it's very upfront and in their face, so it makes their day much faster and much smoother and much more effective, really. I mean, think about when we were just walking a field, you're maybe covering 10-20% of that field in reality. I mean, with the little bit of 20-foot window that you're looking down as you're walking out there in the field, now you're getting a bird's eye view of everything. So every issue that you're seeing out there is going to be captured and you can see it, and then you can walk straight to it and analyze and see what's going on, take action from there. So that would be the main increase there.
Trevor, before we let Tim jump in, I'm going to do a follow-up because something that you said really struck a chord with me, right? Getting out to the fields. How much faster are you finding problems now compared to before with Taranis?
I mean, it makes excuse me, it makes the old way of scouting very slow, I would say. I mean, like I farm as well, and we've got Taranis on all of our acres, and it just when I still have to do a fair amount of diagnostic work for guys that don't have Taranis. So when we're out there, it makes it so much slower. And when you compare that to just being able to to have the app opened up and just walk straight to the spot in the field, it just makes it so much slower doing it the old way. Excuse me.
Hey, Tim, can you introduce yourself to everyone and really kind of maybe weigh in here from your perspective, the things that Trevor's talked about here with scouting in a different way, how do these changes compare to what else you're seeing out in the field?
Yeah. So thanks, Jen. Tim Pearson. I'm the regional account manager for kind of the Western Corn Belt and the Plains states. Prior to this, I was spent 35 years in retail ag as an agronomist and agronomy manager, and everything Trevor says is things that I've lived, and the time that gets spent in the field, a lot of it isn't even useful because you don't know where to go. You don't know which fields you should be in. And I wish that I would have had something like Taranis when I was still in that business so that I could have focused better on my timing and my direction, because you've got so much better relationship with your grower partner when you are in their fields and you know what's going on, and knowing which fields that you need to spend time are incredibly important, so that where there is value, instead of showing up to the farm and talking about the weather or the ball game last night. We can talk about, hey, everything's going great, or hey, here's a field that we need to think about doing something in. But it's reasons for interactions that help strengthen that relationship between grower and advisor.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, Trevor, listening to what Tim had to say and what you're talking about with the advantages of being able to get out to the field faster, let's also talk about when you are finding that problem quicker, you're able to bring a solution when you're going out to look at that field and to have a conversation with the customer, right? Tell me a little bit about that, and let's get into some detail about some examples. Do you have some examples that you can give us of situations where you found the problem faster and you were able to bring a solution to the customer?
Oh yeah, there's lots of them, and the solution is always more precise. So like going back to stand counts, for example, that's the low-hanging fruit, easy one to pick apart, first one of the season. Now, instead of going out there and doing 5 or 6 different stand counts, we can get a bird's eye view of the stand of the entire field. So then we can know, okay, this field needs replanted, this field doesn't need replanted. But then it boils down to 99% of the time, not all of that field needs to be replanted. It might just be a corner, it might be 50% of it, but at least now we know. So guys are actually going out there, be that me making them a shape file that they can put in their machine. We've done that. Or some guys will, even if they're just using an air seeder or something that doesn't have that capability, they'll just have the app in their hand. And they'll be out there in the field and they'll see, okay, I'm to a spot that's got a low stand count, pepper a little more in right there. So I mean, getting them that solution faster, and the solution is much more precise. Or like later in the season, you can look at weeds, for example. One of my farms, for example, 45-acre field, I only sprayed 17 acres of it because it mapped out and showed me exactly where the pigweeds were at in the field, and they weren't everywhere. So why would I spray chemical everywhere? I wasn't putting a residual down, and that becomes a conversation, obviously. When you're putting residual down, that's not very feasible to not put it everywhere. But I was just spraying Liberty and Roundup out there. It was a later season application, so why spray it everywhere? That more than paid for Taranis right there, only putting chemical on less than half the field. And we had quite a few other customers doing that same thing. We are bugs late season. It will, so those later flights will actually give you a percentage defoliation on soybeans in specific. Corn, it won't. It'll just show you how many images out there actually have defoliation, and it'll find the bugs as well. But on the soybeans and specifically, it'll give you that percentage defoliation. Well, now you can go to your insecticide and, okay, if it's a 20% defoliation threshold before it pays to put that out there, instead of going out there with your graph and picking a leaf and comparing it to see how bad the defoliation is, now you can just get the bird's eye view, and it gives you each image, tells you what the defoliation is on that spot. And it makes that decision so much easier. I mean, on our farm, we haven't sprayed insecticides since we started using Taranis, just because it was always way worse than what we really thought. So now that we're getting that bird's eye view, we can see it's not justified. So we're not doing it. So yeah,
Trevor,
so to answer your question, I mean the solutions are just so much better.
Trevor, the ultimate ground truth's in the combine. And since you're farming it and you're spraying it and you're making your own recommendations, how's that like the weed map uh, example? How was the ground truthing in the combine?
Yeah, it was good. It wasn't perfect by any means. The main issue was on the boundaries. And I knew that going in. So I should have just turned even the right side of the boom on the whole outside pass because there was I think 3 or 4 little pockets of pigweeds on that outside boundary. So really I should have just had it turned on the whole outside. Otherwise, there was one pocket of shattercane, just a small one out in the middle of the field that missed. Otherwise, it was great. So, so as far as I'm concerned, it did a good job.
Trevor, when we think about scouting, right, you have a lot of customers, your customers have a lot of fields, and when you multiply that, there's a lot that needs to happen throughout the course of a given season, right? And typically, when you're trying to scout a bunch of fields, I'm going to call it the old-fashioned way without Taranis, you're going out there. Maybe you don't know where you're going or where to go first. Can you give us an idea of how Taranis helps you define day-to-day activities and maybe some examples of time savings that are related to that?
Right, yeah. One guy that I would point to, a salesman of ours just north of here. Big account, big dairy up there that he was very, very high maintenance, very involved with. So he was always out there scouting their fields, making recommendations, all that stuff. They put Taranis on the entire farm. It's amazing the amount of time that that's freed up for him. And they were in that same boat initially. They wanted somebody out there ground truthing the first year that they did it. So we did. I got an intern. So between him and the salesman, they were ground truthing. But this year they didn't see the need for that because it's just validation is all it is. You're going out there and you're saying, hey, the picture is correct. You have weeds or you have bugs or whatever it might be. So just being able for this specific salesman to not have to be out there 2 days a week scouting this one farm's operation. Now he can just look at the dashboard, go straight to the farms that have issues, figure out what's going on, move on to another customer. It saved him an incredible amount of time.
And when we think about scouting, it's not just telling you what field to go to, right? But what is it also telling you? Is it telling you where in the field to go? When you think about a large field and you may be doing some drive-by scout and looking to see what the crop looks like, how is Taranis really kind of directed what type of scouting you do when you think about the focus on where to go in a field?
Oh yeah, you always go right to the worst spot. So so like with Stan, that's the one that requires the most trips to the field just because it will tell us that yes, there's a stand issue, but it won't tell us why. It won't tell us if it was dry, if it was crusting, if you have some kind of a disease. We still got to figure that part out. So that's probably the one that requires the most trips to the field. But at least then we can go straight to the worst area. I mean, there's no sense in walking in an area and digging in an area that the stand is 99%. It's fine there. Go to the area where you've got a stand of 50% maybe and see what's going on. Figure out what that issue is. On top of that, then just being able to meet others, that's been something that's been pretty beneficial. Like, I'll still meet some customers and the salesmen out in the fields when we're looking at things. So I'll get that phone call and say, "Hey, meet me at this field at this spot. If there's a big red spot or something out there, say like we're gonna go to this spot. So if I get there late, I know where they're at in the field. I can just meet them out there. Makes it much faster for one, and much more precise."
Tim, from your perspective, could you weigh in here? We're talking a lot about how Trevor does things, how his team does things, how his sales agronomists, are using Taranis out in the field. Can you weigh in and maybe give us an idea of if other teams are approaching efficiency a little bit differently, or what that looks like from your perspective in the field?
I think there's a lot of similarities with across a different set of organizations that the things that are similar are the things that have made them successful. So I guess what I mean by that is in my past life, we may have somebody that's just come in and here's the best price and we'll see you next year. Or you have places like ag retail that I have always been involved with that, okay, we need to bring something other than a gallon of stuff or a pound of stuff, or we need to bring knowledge, we need to bring expertise, we need to bring service, we need to bring all these things. And the ability to do that when we use things like Trevor was talking about what his team's responsible for at CVA is, the higher level service things that make the relationship stronger and stickier between ag retail or the grower and the advisors. And I think it's very similar across different organizations where that happens, and the results that it happened because of that.
Tim, you touch a lot of places across the countryside. Can you share an example and maybe drill down with some specificity and maybe give an example of a retailer? I don't need to know the who, but how they were able to quantify ROI or show some real business impact from using Taranis, right? When we think about efficiency and scouting and time.
Yeah, and those things are things that are different that ag retail is having to get used to wanting to track. And it's a lack of labor. Again, it's everything Trevor talks about. It's a lack of time. It's less people doing more stuff. um yeah, I do have some retail partners that track how many new growers, how many new dollars of revenue from that, and it's astounding results actually.
Trevor, when you were kind of talking about scouting, you talked about how Taranis impacts your team, your sales agronomy, you specifically, your sales agronomy team, but you also talked about growers, right? Growers who trust Taranis, growers who put their whole operation on Taranis. Can you give me some insight with regard to, from your perspective and your seat at CVA, what you've seen with regard to growers and how growers are getting some efficiency out of being able to use Taranis?
Yeah, and I'd say, I mean, obviously everything depends on the grower, but but many of them it's the exact same things that I've been talking about with our salesmen. It's fewer trips out to the farm, and it's when they are out there, they can go straight to that spot in the field and figure out what's going on. And on top of that, just the efficiency of the recommendation itself. So, like one example that I've used is soil sampling. I mean, when times are tough, you can't afford to go out there with fertilizer on every acre of a field not knowing if it's needed or not. You have to know that the fertilizer is needed there, and then you can put it there, or you can not. If it's not needed there, why would you put it there? And the same thing goes here. Like with replanting. Yeah, the one spot you might have walked out in had a poor stand, so you're going to replant the whole field without knowing if the whole field really needs planted. Now you can actually see, and it's a justified application or a justified replant, that only these acres truly need the replant. Same thing with herbicide. Only these acres truly need the herbicide, as long as there's not a residual in the tank. Insecticide, I mean everything. So it's just driving that efficiency, and guys are seeing a return on that by being efficient, taking advantage of those opportunities to save, and then that most times that more than pays for the Taranis.
Is Taranis helping you drive different types of conversations with your customers, Trevor?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it makes the conversation so much more in depth when you're seeing everything that's going on. And some people that actually kind of freaks out. I had one customer 2 years ago. I was still in sales. I did sales before I moved over into this role. Taranis was new to me. This guy seemed like he would be interested in it, so we put it on quite a few of his acres, not 100%, but most of them. And I would get phone calls constantly from this guy because every issue that was in that field he was seeing, and he was a very meticulous guy, and it just drove him nuts. It absolutely drove the man nuts because he just could not stand to see that there was these little issues that he had had on the farm his entire life, but now they were quantified and he could see them. So, so yeah, the conversations much more in depth now that you're seeing everything. Fertility, for example, that's been one that's been amazing. Just looking at those late season flights, and you can see, okay, you've got zinc deficiency or you've potassium deficiency, and it leads to those conversations about foliar fertilizers or soil sampling or what we need to do for next year. The conversations are just much more agronomically based, and it gets you away from that whole what's your price on 32, or what's your cost on this? When you're actually talking agronomics, you're talking solutions, and you're no longer just a price tag. And we've had lots of guys stick with us or even come to us just because of that. We've got customers that have actually told me they have Taranis just for us, for our salesmen's sake, so that way we can be more efficient, and that way our recommendations are better because they see that as saving them money in the end. And I
So
believe it does.
I'm hearing you say Taranis is helping you bring data back solutions to your customers.
Hmm. Yeah,
Tim,
exactly. Yeah.
can you weigh in on that? What's your perspective there?
I agree 100%. And I kind of chuckled when Trevor was talking about replanting, because what did we do before, or in the absence of anything Taranis? You go dig the 6 row out of the tree line and fill it up, and you drive around and hope that you hit all the places where it's thin.
Pretty much. Yeah. And
So
guys
it's
are still doing that, but at least if they've got the app opened up on their phone, or if they've got some way to put a shapefile in, at least they know they're hitting all the spots then.
Yeah,
can you
even if they don't have a controller in the tractor, you can look at it on an iPad or a phone and get way closer
Hmm.
than the old drive around, make a few laps method.
Yeah.
so if we're not driving around and making a few laps, right? If we're getting away from that, Trevor, can you quantify for me or try to quantify? You guys have been with us, it'll be 8 seasons next year. How many hours in a day or how many hours in a week would you say using Taranis saves you? I've heard you talk about different conversations with your customers, being able to see the problem before you go out to the field, bringing solutions to your customers. What does that look like in quantifiable hours for you?
For the ones that are more heavily adopted and getting more of their customers signed up for Taranis, I mean, like that guy right north of me, that salesman up there, it has probably saved him, between him and an intern, I mean, I would say probably 6 to 8 hours a week during the season, just by not having to constantly be going to this farm and to that farm. So he would probably be seeing the most savings. Other ones probably looking at, and this is just a shot in the dark. We don't quantify any of this, but I would say I mean, I would sure think the majority of them would be at that, yeah, 5, 6, 7 hours a week. I would probably say of time saved and not having to drive, and depending on how far strung out they are, if they're having to make further trips, it's going to vary obviously, but it's been significant. I would say that.
So it's almost a whole day. So from your perspective, if I was working a 5-day work week instead of 6 or 7, where is your team? Where do you see your team? Where are you putting those hours back? What are you doing with your time? The time that you get back.
Depends for the Yeah, for the ones that are the newer salesmen, the ones that are more driven, trying to grow their business, they're focusing that primarily on service, I would say, making those deliveries and scouting for other customers, and knocking on new doors, trying to pick up new business. It would be mostly focused on that. For some of our well, for some of the middle age, my age kind of guys, mid 30s, I would say a lot of that's probably spent on time with their family when they're not having to make those in the middle of the season. They're not having to work those 80-hour weeks. Maybe that's dialed back to a 60-hour week, and they have more time for their family. So that's what I would say for those guys.
Tim, how about you? What are you seeing out there for your customers, for organizations that are using Taranis? You're getting time back. What are you seeing those individuals do with that time?
The big one for me is what Trevor said. If I can go home an hour or two earlier at night and sit at my kitchen table and go through insights on my laptop, instead of spending that 3 or 4 hours after work trying to get around and get some sort of a peek at a field, that's a big deal. If I can sit there and watch my kids running around and be home instead of locked in the pickup. And I don't care how good you are, your scouting's marginal on 2 feet unless you know where to go.
I've heard
Yeah,
Trevor.
but that is a good point too. On yeah, just being able to. The vast majority of our guys are utilizing the app on their phone. So if they're in their office, which is not very often in the middle of the season, yeah, they'll pull it up on the desktop because I think it's better on the desktop personally, but the vast majority are using the app. So yeah, like Tim said, they could be at home and then just look at it there, and lots of them are.
I've heard you say it a few times, this morning, Trevor, when times are tight, when times are tight. Tim, I'm going to throw this out to you, probably, ask you to weigh in on this as well, Trevor. But when times are tight, how does efficiency, especially using Taranis, become a competitive edge? Whether it's Tim for organizations that you deal with, or Trevor, when we go back to you, how does efficiency using Taranis become a competitive edge for you within your organization specifically? But Tim, we'll kick it off with you.
Trevor hit on it a little bit ago, but when life's good and we got big commodity prices and big yields and everybody's trying to figure out what boat they're going to buy next, it's fun, right? When times are tough, though, you got to have data to be able to make decisions to put those dollars where they need to go and be efficient. You can't guess at it. And I always in my career started with grid soil sampling because I knew that was the place I could be the most efficient right off the bat with the grower, is knowing where to put that nutrition in the field. And I was able to get a lot of business because of that, and keep a lot of business because of that, because otherwise you're just like Trevor said earlier, you're slinging it out there not knowing that half the field may be at a level that is overkill, putting more nutrition on, or you're putting the wrong kind of nutrition on. So knowing having data, knowing where that every dollar is going is so much more important when times are tough.
Trevor, how about you?
I would second that for sure. I mean, you look at any other business in the world, they're gonna drive towards efficiency, and they're gonna have metrics that measure the efficiency of their operation. And farming is a business. I mean, lots of farmers don't see it as that. They see it as the old family farm, but in reality, that's their business, and they need to drive towards efficiency because efficiency is what keeps them alive, basically. So I'm in north central Kansas here. The farmers that fail around here are always the ones that try and save their way into prosperity. It's not the ones that are adopting the new technologies and taking advantage of these things that drive efficiency. It's the ones that, instead of putting 120 pounds of nitrogen on their corn, they take it back to 80 and they sling 1152 out there just like they always have because they think they need it, and when in reality they don't know if they need it, or they switch to generic this product or cut the rate on that product. Those are the ones that typically don't survive. So the ones that do survive are the ones that are doing the grid sampling and utilizing all the technologies that will drive towards that efficiency. And I mean, like with the weeds, for example, on my farm, going back to that 17 acres got sprayed. I mean, to save that amount of money, I would have used half the rate of Roundup, or of Liberty and Roundup, basically. Well, now instead, what I did was I put 40 ounces of Liberty out there instead of the 32 ounces. So the areas that actually got sprayed, where there was actually weeds, they got smoked. So I got a guaranteed kill. Well, I say that, more of a chance of kill in those areas, and saved money at the same time. So that's just one example where efficiency, at the end of the day, that's what keeps guys alive.
Guys, this has been a really great conversation around capacity gains, how we're using it with customers, a lot of really good real life examples. We're gonna wrap up our capacity gains conversation. We're gonna shift over to hard savings, but there is a question, and I would and it's not necessarily about capacity gains, but I do want to address the question. Jason, I would throw it out to you. I would throw it out to Tim. The question is, are the drones that we use purpose-built drones? Or is there an opportunity, does an opportunity exist to integrate the visual capabilities with the agronomics of other drone use cases? For example, applying a fungicide while also collecting the visual data.
Tim, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. No, they're not purpose built. And then the secret sauce of Taranis is not the drone; it's the AI behind it and all of the analytics that we supply to that. And the way we do it, it would be hard to incorporate both processes at the same time. Good question though.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, absolutely good question, because this is going to change rapidly going into the future, right? But Tim's right. The secret sauce of Taranis that stays the same probably no matter what happens in the future is having that AI to help you efficiently and quickly do that work and become more actionable than ever on more and more acres. That's where we're going. That's where a lot of these companies are going. But today, those are two separate processes. But again, we add an efficiency even for that drone spraying or drone application, just as Trevor mentioned. I don't need to guess where I'm going to go out and spray before I go out into the field. I know exactly where I'm going. And in fact, I even know what weed species are out there. So I know what kind of tank mix I'm going to need to take care of the problem that I have. So I think we've done a decent job of summarizing it. And yeah, that's probably the future. So whoever asked that question, I'd encourage you to go out there and do some research, because there's a lot of fun stuff happening in the drone space. And we're certainly going to stay on the forefront of it.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Tim. And Trevor, thank you for a very robust conversation around capacity gains. Guys, we've heard a lot of things about capacity gains and examples and time savings, right? A lot around time. We know that there's only so many hours in the day. What do you do with those hours to be the most productive? I'm going to throw a poll question out there before we shift to hard savings. Poll question is, if your team gained extra time during the season, where would that time be focused? Would you spend it more with growers, internal planning, maybe crop planning like Trevor talked about, time with family, personal development? What are your thoughts there? We'll give everyone a few seconds through what we mean when we say hard savings, and maybe share a quick example of what that looks like for a retailer.
Yep. Thank you, Jen. So appreciate this, guys. So one of the things we noticed at Taranis was we needed to go out with our customers and start talking about measuring ROI, measuring the return on investment. So to obviously have drones come out, take images of fields, to run AI on it, to provide all the software and data that makes it easy to use your mobile app and walk right out, like Trevor said, to see what the problem is with your grower. All that costs money, of course. We all know that, right? So how do you determine that there's a return on investment in what Taranis brings to your business? Well, there's a couple ways we've seen our partners using it. One is increased crop protection sales. One is growth in overall market share with their customers. We've seen some that are interested in tracking seed retention. How good am I retaining my seed customers? Lots of different ways to look at the measurement. We already talked about the gains that you're seeing in efficiency before, but now what we're going to talk about is those actual hard savings. So sometimes this one gets overlooked. But if you're driving your truck around less, for example, every time you drive your truck around less, every mile saves time and money and puts that back in your pocket. And I'm preaching to the choir on this one for all the retailers and agronomists that are out there. You know this. In your own business, you face the same challenges. You're driving spray rigs and trucks all around the county, but you don't really know where they're going. You're probably going to get a letter from your boss, right, asking you to do it a little bit differently. So what we're looking at now at Taranis here is talking about how do you actually save money through the fact that you're going to save time. And the way we do it at Taranis, again, is leaf level images on every single acre. And you can see those and get summary of those without ever having to leave your desk in the morning, right? Proactive phone calls to growers, helping them deal with their issues before they even know they have one. So that's what we're asking here is, what would you do with the savings that you get from something like this if you could save that time and that money? And then I just have to, Jen, sorry, I have to mention it because that last question was really cool. What I love about this industry is those two questions are answered and said it's all about relationship. I want a really good relationship with my family, and I want a really good relationship with my work family, which is my growers I serve. So guys, that's what we're all about too. We want to put more of that time back in your hands, and more money obviously is saved as we're doing it. So thanks, Jen, and hopefully I got to it there, and appreciate you guys being on for this call.
All right, we have got one more poll question. This is the last one. We'll throw it up before we start the discussion around hard savings. Guys, where do you see the greatest opportunity for measurable savings in your organization, right? If you remember, you think that Taranis equals ROI, ROI equals opportunity. Let's see what we've got happening here. We've got reduced scouting time or travel coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds. There's a clear winner here. Still coming in. All right, we're going to go ahead and end the poll, and there is a clear winner. We'll share the results with you here. So the clear winner is reduce scouting or travel time, but there's still some answers across the other choices there. So it's still clear that every organization measures efficiency a little bit differently. Let's dig into what hard savings looks like in practice, right? We're going to go back to Tim. We're going to go back to Trevor. Trevor, I'm going to kick it off with you again. Where have you seen the most significant time or cost savings since adopting Taranis? Has it been in maybe miles, time, reduced field visits, maybe all of the above? What are your thoughts there?
I would say probably time, miles saved there. It could also be the employee retention. That's a hard one to measure because if they were getting worked to death before when they weren't able to just go to those certain spots in the field when their scouting wasn't more efficient and they were putting in those hard hours, those long weeks, it's hard to say if those guys would have stuck around or not. I mean, not to keep pointing at that salesman right north of here for the amount of hours that he was putting in. But personally, I kind of doubt that he would still be here if it wasn't for Taranis and him not having to work such long hours. So that one is hard to quantify, but I think there's a lot of value there just by making a guy's work week not quite so stressful and not quite so time just long hours. But as far as what's quantifiable more so, I would say the time savings as far as not having to make so many trips to the field.
Tim, how about you? What are you seeing in this space? Tangible
Well, I
cost.
agree like Trevor said, a lot of this is hard to put a number on and quantify. But I've had multiple my retail partners mention the fact that employee retention is enhanced when you have tools like Taranis to do a lot of this what I call busy work. Walking fields is busy work. If you don't know where to go, it's busy work. Um, having purposeful and meaningful conversations with growers that's more than kicking rocks around the driveway trying to think of what to talk about next is a cost savings. Yeah, I had a guy that used to be with Southern States Co-op tell me they did some studies several years ago, and it costs $500 every time the truck drives up a driveway. So how do we make that $500 meaningful instead of just what do you think about the weather today conversation?
So we heard it a little bit when we were talking about capacity gains, right? We're having data-driven conversations with our customers. We're bringing our customers solutions because we know exactly where the problem is before we step out of our house, before we step out of our office. We know where to go. Trevor, can you give maybe a concrete example from your experience of what that looks like? Maybe one field or one grower where the impact was really very clear.
The impact was clear as far as how Taranis impacted the conversation. Is that what you're asking?
Impacted the conversation, or there was a benefit in dollar savings or time savings. What do you see there?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Going back to Stan, that's an easy one. Customer just east of here saw that he was having stand issues, went out to the field. It was compaction. He had had quite a bit of rain. So yeah, so went and met with the guy at one of the fields and was looking at the issue, and then we could pull it up, we could quantify everything, and we made some maps, said, okay, I need to replant X number of acres. I can't remember what the number was. It was quite a few. But then he knew exactly how much seed he needed to get and how many acres on this field he needed and how many acres on this field he needed. It made it extremely efficient and easy. Same thing goes with weeds. That's been another very low-hanging fruit, meeting with guys when they're trying to plan the logistics of their spraying. Maybe they can look at the dashboard and say, okay, these fields are the worst. We pull up the pictures and okay, these pigweeds are 2 foot tall. You need to start there, obviously, before they get bigger. But then we can look at these other fields and okay, these ones are just coming out of the ground. These weeds are. So we've maybe got a little bit of time there. We're going to get to them quickly, obviously, but the bigger weeds are more priority. So just planning logistically for some of those guys and for our machines as well. That's been great. Like, well, one of those customers that told me that they have Taranis specifically for us, that has increased the efficiency of our rigs. This one in particular, we did a spraying for him. And yeah, then we knew where to go. We could just look at that and we could see which ones were the worst, and then we could get those jobs in and we could get priority on those jobs that were really bad and help plan the logistics of our rigs as well.
Tim, when you think about customers that you work with, how do you help them capture or communicate the types of savings, that Trevor's talking about?
I think it's hard to it's easy to get the horse to the pond, but you can't stick their head underneath it and make them drink. And ag retail, we're the most stubborn bunch of people you ever seen in your life, and we got to see it and live it and feel it. I mean, even me, I've been working for Taranis for almost longer than everybody. I think there's 4 or 5 people here that have been here longer. And in my previous life as an agronomist, and my current life as an agronomist, you don't just put that away. You gotta believe in it and understand it and see it to really get buy-in. And I'm not going to say that I didn't have buy-in, or else I would have never made the leap to come to Taranis. But it was, I think, the second year that we were going, and back then weren't doing millions of acres, and I had a lot of time to look at insights as they came in. And there was a field that the east third of it was no stand, and the west 2/3 was perfect. And I called the a teammate and asked if we could get that back to refly, because it looked like they probably planted it 2 different days. Planted 2/3 of it, and then it rained, and it was 3 or 4 days later. But we wanted to get the grow a good sand count. And no more than I'd called one of my teammates, one of the folks from the organization called and said, "Hey, can we?" He thought the same thing. "Can we refly this field because it looks like it rained and blah blah blah." Well, 2 hours later, he called me back and he said, "Don't refly." And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, that was where he changed to a different lot number of seed, and it was bad. And the grower was getting ready to put the bean planter on and go plant beans. So it was a perfect storm of. I mean, I didn't deserve to have this kind of fortune as early in my Taranis career as I did, but I did nonetheless. And it was a story that I will never forget. And the time that it saved him not having the bean planter on, and could just go back out, plant that corn, and then get on with life.
So that's a really good specific example when we're thinking about ROI. In your experience, what sets apart organizations who quickly turn these efficiencies into measurable ROI? How are they different from other organizations that are out there?
Strong survivors, people look up to them, not the folks that kind of halfway do everything and are on the struggle bus constantly.
The struggle bus, that's yeah. When margins are tight, there's you might be on the struggle bus, right? What patterns do you see in these teams that achieve the fastest savings, that are really leveraging efficiency and technology like Taranis?
Well, I think it's just what I just said. The folks that are leveraging technology and offering the highest level of service don't always need to worry about, I got to be cheaper than everybody else, because there's so much value. Ag's a get it right business. And if you don't know and trust the person that's giving you the advice and the information that he's getting to create that advice, then you're not gonna succeed. And the folks that I know that are successful, which is pretty much all my customers, they make give real advice with using real data, and they're all very successful.
And just to piggyback on that, so like soil sampling, for example, currently this year in Kansas, we're nearly 3 times where we typically are at this point in the year. And that's, yeah, and in a down economy too, and with yields that are pretty subpar in my area. So just that fact that guys are finally realizing on a more broad, the majority now of farmers are starting to realize that efficiency truly pays. And they're coming to us. They're coming to those companies that are pushing this kind of stuff and are involved in it and are knowledgeable in it. So just, yeah, the fact that we're picking up new customers with these technologies and they're realizing that efficiency truly does pay. That's next year will be very interesting. I would expect our acres to be up quite a bit, quite frankly, just because guys are recognizing that efficiency really pays.
So Tim, real advice, real data. Trevor, when times are tight, efficiency is what pays. So let me maybe wrap up our hard savings conversation with this question, and I'll ask it to both of you. I don't care who answers first. When margins are thin and when times are tight, tell me why Taranis is a necessity.
I can hit that one first. Yeah, and you can't make blind decisions anymore. With the amount of money that guys are spending on inputs, it's a stupid decision to go out there and make blind decisions and just throw thousands of dollars on the ground, not knowing if it's truly needed. So the fact that Taranis will quantify that and tell us exactly where the problems are, so then we know exactly what to do on those acres and how many acres that it is, what percentage of the field it might be, then every decision they make is justified. So sometimes that's not going to be an ideal thing. I mean, if they've got a weed disaster on the whole field, at least then they know that it's on the whole field and that application of the whole field is justified. Same thing with replant, insecticide, fungicide, anything. The decisions will now be justified. And if that decision is we don't need to do anything, that's great. And that's one interesting conversation I've had with lots of growers. They'll come to me at the end of the season and say, "Hey, we didn't find anything. Our return on investment on this was crap. We didn't save any money. We didn't find any issues." I tell them, I was like, my goodness, isn't that a good thing? Like you didn't find any significant issues that you needed to address, that you didn't find bugs, you didn't find disease, you didn't find all these things. And then you knew that you didn't need to spend any money. So look at that. In reality, your return on investment is probably gigantic compared to what you've done in the past. But just the fact that they didn't find those gigantic disasters in their mind, that meant they didn't see a return on investment. And yeah, that was a very eye-opening thing to have those conversations. But once you had that conversation and they recognized, yeah, you're right. We didn't see any big issues. We didn't have to spend an excess amount of money, and we knew with concrete data that we didn't need to spend it. It's a pretty easy conversation to have.
Tim, tell me why Taranis is a necessity, right? We know Taranis equals ROI. We've heard it for the session here. From your perspective, what do you got?
I mean, I would just say the same thing Trevor said. So we don't need to listen to me repeat all that. But I mean, everything he said is why you gotta have the information to know where that dollar's going.
Guys, this has been a really great discussion, I think, with some really good takeaways. I've got one final question for each of you as we wrap up and we think about capacity gains and hard savings and efficiency in total. In a sentence or two, how has Taranis influenced the way you think about the connection between efficiency and ROI? Tim, we'll start with you.
I mean, it's taking everything that we've talked about today and putting it all together. So I've got solid data and I'm timely. And if you haven't used the dashboard before, getting on there and I've got 100 fields under this location or region or whatever, and I can click on an arrow and know where my stand count issues might be. So instead of wondering how I'm going to pick 10 fields to go look at today out of that 100 that might or might not have an issue, I know which 10 fields are the worst that I can go straight to, take my phone, walk to the places where it says it's not. Is it this slow emerging? Is there really a stand issue? I know all that, and I know where to go look, whether it's stand or weeds or diseases or nutrients or bugs. It takes me literally 5-10 minutes to look at the web app and know where to spend my time. And then once I got that, I've got good, solid, real, accurate data to make a decision with.
Trevor, how about you? 8 years is a long time to be partners with Taranis. How have we influenced the way you think about the connection between efficiency and that ROI piece?
Tim summed it up pretty good. I mean, efficiency kind of equals ROI. I mean, you can't really have one without the other. It's every decision has to be justified. So, and to justify a decision, you have to have some kind of a metric to justify it on. I mean, you got to have some kind of data that you can point to and say, okay, this is why I made that decision. So, in the past, where that was blindly walking out in a field and you might see pigweeds everywhere and then you go spray everywhere, that's fine, but you really didn't cover all of that field. It could have just been that the areas that you were looking at were the bad spots and the north half of the field was fine, but you don't know. So, at least now, when you can look at that bird's eye view and look at that heat map and say, okay, this is what needs to be done, and you've got something you can directly point at that says why this needs to be done, it just makes all the sense in the world.
Guys, that's a great way to close the conversation today. Efficiency doesn't just save time, it creates opportunity. Jason, I'm going to hand it back to you for a few closing thoughts, and then we'll throw up our QR code for CEU credit.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Tim. Great expertise was just demonstrated there from a longtime user of Taranis. So we really appreciate that. Guys, if you think about Taranis in your business, think about what actionable intelligence on every single acre with leaf level imagery, we say 0.3 of a millimeter, allows you to see exactly what you would see if you stood out there in the field and held the crop in your hand, is going to empower you to be far more efficient in the work that you're doing. And why is that important? One of the things I've been saying to our customers who've signed up this year is, please, before you agree to sign up, agree with me that you'll actually measure the ROI inside your organization and what this does for you. And while we're talking a lot about retailer ROI, guys, let's be honest, what's the most important thing is that the growers get ROI out of this. And what I loved about the conversation between Trevor and Tim is that everything was built off an agronomic base on what's best and what's needed for the farmer, making decisions to at times apply more and at times apply less, but to make the right decision based on what I could see in every single acre of the field. And it's just not something we have time to do any other way. So really appreciate the conversation today. This generates ROI for both the grower and the retailer. And the last part I wanted to end with, Jen, because it just can't be replaced. Nobody will give you more time. And I love the fact that we talked about spending more time with your families, spending more time with your grower customers who become like family. You become part of their family when you're serving them the way you guys do. And I would just encourage you, Taranis can help you do more and more of that. And I think your families and I know your growers are going to be thrilled with the service level they're receiving. So give some consideration. If you're not using Taranis today, talk to your leadership teams about it. If you are using your Taranis today, let's start talking about ROI with your local team. Thanks, Jen.
Jason, Tim, Trevor, thank you so very much. I think that we've got some really powerful takeaways, and those are really great perspectives to end on. Before we sign off, I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we'll give you the QR code. We were approved for CEU credit, so if you need that, feel free to scan the code. We're also going to do a gift card drawing. We're going to do three winners today. We had a really nice turnout this morning, so we appreciate your time, and thank you for that. Gift card winners are Jerome Beck. I've got a great easy name to pronounce there. I've got Jenny Devaney, and I've got Mike Twining. So we will get an Amazon gift card out to you at the email address that you use to register for the webinar. I'm going to leave the QR code up for a few more minutes, but really just to recap really quickly, I think that the discussion today made one thing clear. Taranis equals ROI, right? When minutes matter, when margins are tight, efficiency is more than a goal. It's money back in your pocket, and that's the Taranis difference. So again, to our guests, Trevor, to Tim, thank you so very much for your time today. If you guys enjoyed our webinar here today, today's session, we've got another one in the webinar series, Ease of ROI, on November 20th. Please feel free to join. We'll explore strategic business planning at that time and how marketing is going to help you drive growth across your retail organization. Again, thanks so much to everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you guys for having me too.
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks for doing it.
Trevor.
Take care, guys.